Welcome to the No More Mondays podcast, the show that inspires confident professionals by interviewing people who actually enjoy what they do for work. I'm your host, Angie Callen, and I welcome you to join me each week as I chat with founders, entrepreneurs, and employees who have figured out that special sauce, the magic, the mystery to having no more Mondays. Hey there, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the No More Mondays podcast. Today, we are welcoming Helen Day to talk about the power of positive psychology. We're continuing a little international theme as we welcome Helen all the way from the UK, where she is making waves in the world of training and coaching. So get ready, because she and I are going to affirm a lot of each other's perspectives over and over again as we dig into applied positive psychology coaching and her recent research on how to engage Gen Z in the workplace. Now, there's a topic I love. It's a can of worms of the very best kind, so let's dig right in. Helen, welcome to No More Mondays.
Angie, thank you so much for having me on here. I'm really pleased and excited to have a conversation with you.
I am too, for a few reasons. First, we have some complementing kind of sandboxes that we play in the whole workforce world. And I love that you come from the science background. And I'm also very curious to talk a little bit about kind of your findings about this research in the UK and the US and the workforces and where we see overlaps and similarities or where there's differences, because I think there's a lot of listeners out there who will find this really interesting. So let's talk about you first before we get into kind of all this Gen Z stuff. So you've got a very interesting background, recent studies, research, but let's just get an idea of what you're up to right now. Give us kind of your elevator pitch and tell everybody a little bit about you.
Okay. The elevator pitch. So I am the founder and director of Positive Leaders. We are a positive psychology consultancy based here in sunny south of England. And we work with all different types of organizations and schools, really to focus in on finding a way to allow individuals and teams and organizations to thrive and flourish by using evidence-based tools from the world of positive psychology. So it's all about human connection. It's all about how noticing when we're getting it right and how we can build upon it.
I think it's so relevant, especially just even in this very snapshot of today, with how much we all want connection, but also the generational stuff that we're going to get more into and how many generations are in the workforce and how different they all are, even more so than before. And this aspect of really how to bring it all together and be very aware and conscious of it.
I mean, at the moment, leaders are facing the unusual position of having 5 different generational cohorts at work. And it's the first time that's happened. And actually, we've got to get our heads around this, because I think in my research, I found that by 2050, I'm not certain I'm still going to be working by 2050, but a lot of your listeners might be. By 2050, Angie, we're going to have 15 different cohorts in the workplace at any given time. So we really have to start being flexible in our understanding of of how we can bring about that human connection.
I think everybody out there from a career perspective would love to understand how you got here. So what's your journey and how did you get into this kind of work?
Okay, so Angie, I would quite like to understand how I got here, because this was never planned. I never had a career plan. I actually started 30 years ago working as a teacher in secondary education. And I moved through to I've always had an interest in pastoral care. And I recognized from an early stage that actually I needed to work with my teachers to help skill them up so they could make the experience better for our learners in the classroom. We have, if we have happy teachers in the classroom, that's going to have a positive effect on the kids in our classroom and how they engage with the work. And from that, I actually went into training and coaching in the education world. And then about 10 or 11 years ago, just after I had my daughter, I decided to retrain, and I retrained as a cognitive hypnotherapist. And during that training, I came across this world of positive psychology. And in it just pulled together all the strands of what I had instinctively known, in as much of, looking after people, looking after their well-being, and how important that is for all of us. And I found a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. And I started to do that study. And from that study, I'd already started to go into organizations and start to talk about leadership. And I realized that what I was discovering through that study at university was a whole load of tools and techniques that I could take into the workplace. Because I quite often say to my clients that we feed what we focus on. And invariably in our organizations, we focus in on the challenges. We focus in on where we didn't get it right. And there's definitely a place for that. But I genuinely believe that we need to balance that focus and be focusing in on where we are getting it right, because people then are engaged, they are enthusiastic, they're motivated, and they genuinely want to do what is right for themselves and their organization when they feel there's an alignment between those two states.
We talk a lot on No More Mondays about that value alignment in your career, and oftentimes that leads to that satisfaction piece. And I find it really interesting that right from the get-go, you're like, I don't really know how I got here. Let's call it a very organic journey, Helen.
Absolutely.
And
I like that.
Exactly. And sometimes that leads you exactly where you're supposed to be because you didn't try to control it and you just took the doors that opened, which I'm a huge fan of. But I think it's really interesting how it led you to this research right on the cusp of a very interesting time to be researching something like that. And it probably changed some of the outcomes, but I think probably heightened the awareness around everything that's going on in that little ecosystem to make your research even more applicable.
I agree. And this is purely my own perceptions of Gen Z. I think they are remarkable. Absolutely remarkable as a generation. And they are coming into the workplaces with an entirely different set of expectations as to what that working world can bring them and will bring them. And they are massively shaped from the world that they grew up in. They are the only generation, this is the first generation, who has never been without technology. So and Gen Zers will often have 4 or 5 devices going at the same time. I mean, I literally have a laptop, and if my phone goes at the same time, my brain just goes into meltdown. But our generation Zs, can work that technology. We need to, as organizations, be really clear about supporting the overall well-being of our Gen Zers coming in. They're also looking for, I've spoken to a lot of leaders for part of my research, and there is a joke that, you invite a Gen Zer in on the first day and you ask them to make you a cup of tea, and they make it and they look for a promotion immediately. And there is this sense of, if I do this, I expect to be promoted really quickly. And so organizations really have to be aware of this ambition that is coming out of the Gen Zers and find a way of molding that ambition in a way that supports the Gen Zers and their progress through our organization, but also supports the organization in a really good way. Because one of the things that leaders have said to me is that, the Gen Zers want promotion, but they just don't have the understanding or the experience yet. So
exactly.
As leaders, we've got to find a way of how can we give them a voice? How can we give them that autonomy? How can we help them feel as if they're making a difference in an organization, which the Gen Zers want to do, in a way that is congruent with their level of understanding and experience within our organizations. And that's a challenge, I think, for organizations. We could be thinking about things like reverse mentoring. So, for example, if I had an organization and I had Gen Zers in here, I would want a Gen Zer to come in and mentor me about how to use technology, because I can barely turn my laptop on. And if I do, I congratulate myself. What if we were to use that wealth of experience that our Gen Zers have to come in and, we mentor them in the world of business, but they can mentor us in the strengths that they have, because they do have a lot of strengths.
We're talking a lot about mentorship during this season of No More Mondays.
Okay.
And I love that aspect of how you brought in the idea of the reverse mentorship. And what you're talking about is there's a huge rise in what we call corporate social responsibility here in the US, giving people an outlet to grow or even take ownership or to contribute in a more well-rounded way that isn't just, I take on more responsibility, I lead people, I move up a ladder. And I think being aware of that is very important to engaging not just Gen Z, but all of your people and building a really well-rounded corporate culture.
is that how we engage the Gen Zers is not that as leaders we expect the Gen Zers to change, but we as leaders have to change. And the most compelling way to engage Gen Zers is through supportive leadership. That came out loud and clear in my research. And the constructs behind supportive leadership is feedback and how often we give feedback and the quality of feedback. So I don't know about you, Angie, but when I first started my teaching career, I got feedback sort of once a year, formal feedback. Gen Zers are looking for much more feedback than the normal, 6 monthly or 12 monthly performance management reviews. They're
Absolutely.
looking for reward and recognition. And again, how can we reward and recognize them? And actually, I think the recognition is more important than the reward. You're right. They're not looking necessarily for financial reward. They won't say no to it. But to be honest, none of us would say no to financial reward.
Exactly.
It's that recognition of going, do you know what? I see you, I recognize you, and you're doing really well. And also for us, as leaders, to manage their expectations. This is pretty much one of the first cohorts that are ever coming into the workplace with no work experience. I started work when I was 14 or 15. I learned how to be.
Some of them don't even have internship experience.
No. And so they're coming in and they don't know how to be. And so it's up to us through our level of supportive leadership to manage those expectations, to create a pathway through for them where they can find those touch points of success, where they can use their strengths, where they can use everything that they've gathered, and that the workplace is still a learning place. They know that the education has not equipped them for the working world. They are looking for a really strong and positive training and development opportunities from the day that they walk in. They want to learn. They want to be part of a positive working culture, but they don't necessarily really know what that means. And it's up to us as the leaders of those companies to show them and to demonstrate to them how it is in a working place.
Which means, hey, hiring managers and recruiters out there, stop writing entry-level job descriptions that require 1 to 3 years of experience.
Yeah, because that's not going to happen.
Exactly. And it frustrates new college grads because they're like, well, how the heck am I? It's a complete catch-22. How are you supposed to get experience when you don't have experience and you need the experience to get the experience? And there is, yes, training takes time. However, it builds staff retention and loyalty. And if you go at it with that servant leadership mentality of wanting to give to people, that's not a vulnerable style of leadership. That's just saying people are people and I'm going to meet them where they're at. And I think that's the bigger shift that has to happen with, let's say, the older 2 or 3 generations who are in those management positions and up, and trying to figure out how they meet these kids, for lack of a better term. There's an old person thing to say.
I was talking to a people manager of quite a well-known company over here, and he was saying that he notices that the leaders of that particular organization will walk around at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, just checking to see who's at their desk. And guaranteed they won't find the Gen Zer there, because the Gen Z come in with a sense of work-life balance, for example.
Yeah,
they know, work is important, but so is life. And do you know what was really interesting, Angie? This was highlighted by every leader that I spoke with, and every leader saw it as a positive. It was said almost in a wistfully way of going, oh God, I wish we'd done that. Because I was there, I would go above and beyond because that's what was expected of me. But the Gen Zers, they have got this understanding of work-life balance, which I think we should be supporting, because if we
we should respect it.
Yes, because that's leading them down the path of well-being. And that's what we want. We want our staff. There was a really interesting case study of a company, and I think they made surfboards. It was over in Australia, and this wasn't with Gen Z, I don't think, but it was really interesting. The owner of the company went, do you know what? I want you in at 7 o'clock in the morning. I want you to be gone at 12 o'clock. You can have a quick coffee break, but there's no lunch break. You work. And then at 12 o'clock, you go out, you surf, you go and barbecue, you go and meet up with your friends. You do whatever you want. You don't work. And he kind of hoped that profitability would stay at the same level. And he looked at it the following year and it had gone through the roof.
Up. Yep.
Because they were given that sense of what you do here is important, but what you do out of here is equally important. You are, we want you to be well-rounded people with a good work-life satisfaction. And when we have people with a high level of life satisfaction, as organizations, we're going to benefit from that hugely.
And productivity goes up when you treat people like they're people and allow them space for what they want to do.
Absolutely.
Your productivity goes up because people are working in the hours of the day that they work best, and they have that work-life balance, which is a perfect segue. I'm curious kind of how you found balance. What are routines and habits that you've incorporated to make sure that the scales balance?
So that's a really good question. I'm not certain I can answer it succinctly, but one of the things that I do is that I know one of the most important things for our well-being is having positive emotions during our day, having a wealth of positive emotions. And positive emotions could be contentment, it could be calmness, it could be happiness, it could be excitement. And I actively seek out those moments where I've got those heightened positive emotions. And I might find it walking my dogs down the beach. I'm incredibly lucky. I live about 5 minutes from the beach. So I might find it just making sure that I take kind of half an hour, 45 minutes at lunchtime to go out to the beach and to enjoy that environment, enjoy playing with the dogs. I have, as I've just mentioned, 11-year-old child. My goodness, children get us to touch base. They laugh so much. They enjoy life so much. And just entering into my daughter's world gives me that balance. And I also come from a point of strength. So I know what my strengths are. Strengths are those things that come really easily to us. Our strengths, when we use them, they're really energizing. They're authentic. And so I make sure that during the day, I use my strengths. My personal strengths are in humor and social intelligence, and also bravery. So those are my 3 top strengths. And I make sure that I use those strengths in social intelligence. I love delivering training, whether that's online or face-to-face. And what I'm doing there is using my social intelligence all the time. So I find pockets of the day where I can definitely develop and use my strengths. And that creates balance.
So you said something at the beginning about how you add little pockets of like positive thoughts into your day. So let's add a little pocket of positive thoughts into your day. You ready to play a little game?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, so this is rapid fire. It's rarely rapid. I'll just say that off the bat, Helen. However, it's a fun way to get to know a little bit about you and throw out some recommendations to our guests. So,
okay.
First question is, what is your favorite movie?
Oh, my favorite movie, I have to say, is one of my daughters, and it's a recent one, and it's Sing. It's just joyful and wonderful and humorous and great. I love it. Sing and Sing 2 are my 2 favorite ones at the moment.
There are some amazing, let's call them kid movies, but they aren't just kid movies, let's just say. What is your most memorable travel destination?
It's going to be California. When my husband and I got married, we spent 3 weeks traveling around California, and we were so blown away by the country, by the people, by the views, by everything. I just loved it. I loved it. And we did a mixture of staying in some really nice fancy hotels and also camping, which is my husband's love. And so it was a real mix and match. And we drove down Route 1 and we had the most amazing time. I can't wait to come back. Please invite me, somebody.
I love it. Okay, well, I'm only 2 states away. Okay. But I also love that a lot of times those memorable travel destinations aren't because it was like the most exotic place on earth you could go, but because like an element, like you said, the people, and you had just gotten married. So yeah, super fun. Give us a great book recommendation.
Oh, a great book recommendation. In the world of work, I would definitely look at Positive Leadership by Kim Cameron. He just talks a lot of sense, and he really wraps up how it is to be a positive leader in the workplace. It has definitely influenced a lot of the work that I do. So Positive Leadership by Kim Cameron would be my recommendation.
That's a new one going into the cart right now. And I like to throw some food. I'm always hungry, so I throw some food questions in here. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite snack or guilty pleasure?
Oh, it's going to be chocolate. Says Sarah, who's already been up. I've got an office at the end of the garden. I've already snuck up to the house this afternoon and had a bit of chocolate. Nobody's in the house. I'm here on my own. Nobody will know. So a little bit of chocolate, good chocolate is...
There's Helen's other secret for getting through the afternoon.
Yeah,
right?
that helps really. Chocolate. Have I not mentioned chocolate before? Yeah, chocolate. Go for chocolate.
Of course, this is a show about Mondays. So what is the first word that comes to mind when I say Monday?
Buoyant. Being buoyant. I love Mondays. Mondays to me just bring about a new week of possibilities, a new week of challenges, a new week of doing things differently. So I feel buoyant when I think about Mondays.
That has such an action behind it. Like I can see, like it's like Helen floating on a cloud and just hopping around. That's like there's so much energy there. That is a unique word no one else has ever given us, and It is perfect for you. I love it. And as we wrap things up, there has been so many like little pearls of wisdom and suggestions. And just if you are a leader out there, I really encourage you to go back and listen to this, because Helen has thrown out a lot of very, very practical, actionable suggestions on how you can create a better culture. Yes, a lot of this is about Gen Z, Gen Z, but it could be applicable to everybody. So before we ask you for one more piece of advice, I would love for you to tell listeners where they can find you and just follow this amazing journey you're on. Tune into the research. How do people find you, Helen?
They can find me by my LinkedIn. You can jump on LinkedIn and look up Helen Day, Positive Leaders, and you'll find me on there. And I also have a website, www.positive-leaders.co.uk. So it would be lovely if you've listened to this, just for you to reach out and let me know. It would be lovely. Very exciting as well.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, there's so many amazing suggestions in here, but I would love you to just give us one more. What's your best piece of advice on what our listeners can do to get one step closer to a more enjoyable career or to creating that for others?
Okay. So I've talked about strengths, and I think whether you are going into the workplace for the first time or you have been working for the last 30 years, knowing what your strengths are and having conversations with other people as to what they perceive your strengths to be, and you start having some strengths-based feedback within your organizations, and you can then start to match people's strengths with the jobs that they're doing. And so find out what your strengths are. You can go on to via values in action organization, and you can do a quick survey. It takes about 10 minutes to do, and you can find out what your strengths are. And then once you've found out what your strengths are, find a way of using them every single day. And as a leader, be curious about the strengths of the individuals in your team and the strengths of your team as well, because that then really starts to support a true connection in the workplace. So that would be my recommendation.
I'm a big fan. I like Strengths Finder from Gallup. So That's another awesome tool to be able to actually give people the ability to almost like quantify strengths and be able to define them. But that's just in general, it's a great suggestion, because then you know how to feed your own strengths, feed other strengths, and motivate people in the way they want to be motivated.
Absolutely.
Helen, this has been amazing. Thank you for being part of our show and joining the No More Mondays movement.
Angie, I have absolutely loved it. Thank you so much for asking me on. I genuinely enjoyed talking to you.
And we always love hearing from people who are enjoying what they do for work, but also impacting what others are doing for work. So this had a couple aspects of just very special No More Mondays overlaps. So for those of you out there listening, I would love for you to subscribe to No More Mondays and leave us a 5-star rating, because it is a huge help as we continue to inspire confident professionals with great stories and great resources like Helen has to offer. If you'd like to leave us comments, feedback, or drop a guest suggestion, visit us online at nomoremondays.info. Thanks for listening to this episode of No More Mondays. We hoped you grabbed some great insights to help you improve your professional satisfaction. Please visit us at Apple iTunes and give us a rating so we can continue to offer you awesome interviews and content each week. No More Mondays. New episodes drop every Wednesday. No More Mondays is brought to you by Career Vendors, Inc. in partnership with executive producer Jane Durkee. For more information about career coaching, resume writing, personal branding, recruiting, and entrepreneurship coaching services, visit our website at careerbenders.com. That's careerbenders, B as in boy, S as in Sam.com. This is your host, Angie Callen, signing off. Until next week, when we chat with another inspired, confident professional.